Well, the alert has been activated over there in Iran after these explosions that are happening in different places. This time, well, we're reporting that there are several explosions, one of them apparently happening in Tehran, in an underground facility. Apparently, a strong explosion occurred that could be seen from kilometers away, but that's not all. There are other explosions as well. Well, right now we're going to talk in detail about what's happening. Thank you very much for joining us live. Look, let's get closer to the first area where this explosion can be seen. This explosion is said to have occurred in this area of the capital in Tehran, according to reports. As far as we know, this smoke, this fire is coming from underground, meaning it's an explosion at a facility that is underground. Another thing that also draws attention is this other area where, in Shiraz, another explosion is said to have occurred, a bit further south from there in Iran, which can also be seen. Is it this one? Let's look at the image of the explosion. We'll come back to what has been seen in a moment. Is this the explosion according to reports? Gunshots were heard and an explosion was also heard in the background. This happened in a mountainous area in the city of Shiraz in the southern part of Iran. There have already been several days when explosions have been reported. Some days there are none, and some days there are several explosions in a single day. Last week, there was a day when there were 8 different explosions in 8 different places. This time, they have been reported in 8 different cities. Now, this time it's in Shiraz, mainly in the mountainous area. But images of this explosion are also starting to come out, and now from multiple sides, from multiple angles, people have been able to see how this explosion happened. There we see it. That would be the origin. That's Tehran. It's not a province right next to the capital. It's part of the capital province of Tehran, but this area is called Shahryar. Let's listen. Something is happening over there in Iran according to what people have been saying. Well, that's curious because it's close to residential areas, to buildings on the outskirts, let's say, of the capital Tehran. From what we can see, the explosions have been surprising. There were a series of vibrations felt before the explosion, and then the explosion happened. It's not clear if the explosion was caused by some kind of internal sabotage or sabotage by intelligence from another country. We couldn't rule out the United States, Israel, etc. But the truth is that those kinds of issues, those kinds of situations, let's say, are not confirmed. Not when there's an intelligence report. In any case, sometimes some comments or rumors do get leaked, let's say, but that's not the point, right? The topic is the topic. It's about knowing exactly what's going on, especially when something matches up. Many times when you see that it's not an explosion, just one of those many months that go by and nothing happens. No, this is a period of 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks where strong explosions have been reported. Well, not explosions, but things that are happening also in military areas. This time it's being reported inside this zone as well. Warehouses, munitions and military fuel that reportedly exploded in the city of Shahryar, Tehran province. So we're talking about how is it that ammunition is going to explode? How is it that fuel is going to explode? Obviously, well, this too, we can't think this is a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Definitely not. So now, who caused it? That's the big question. No, here we could think of people within the same regime. I mean, there are divisions within the regime. A part of the population that is also, well, making some kind of move, more like a rebellion, right? That's also a possibility that can't be ruled out, right? The thing is that in that area, well, they haven't mentioned if there are any injured. They haven't mentioned if there are any deaths. They've just reported it. These images have mostly been shared by intelligence accounts discussing this, which also gives us pause. I mean, the fact that they come first through intelligence and not through Iranian networks or Iranian media, but rather through intelligence. First, it makes us think that this is a matter that was brought up by some international intelligence agency. That's what makes us think that there's a movement here that comes before when a war is going to happen or the moment a war is going to break out. There are two media outlets, the Times of Israel and the Axios, that claim information, and internal sources from the United States are warning that a war is coming this weekend or at the latest in 2 or 3 weeks. But everything indicates that the conflict could happen this weekend. Everything is set. As we mentioned earlier, there has been a deployment. Since yesterday, we've seen the first massive deployment of aircraft. Today, we saw more information about this, where you can see movements of planes carrying fuel and the planes that bring fuel. These tankers, no, they don't come alone. They're usually accompanied. And it's nothing less than these F-35 jets, F-16S, all these kinds of planes. They turn off the transponder and fly there, they fly there, next to these tankers that are refueling them. Does this mean that everything is already on the table? Interestingly, we're also seeing movements from Russia. We're seeing movements from Iran, but let's get to what's happening. Iranian officials right now, also in private, are giving different information than what they say publicly. In private, they're admitting that the differences with Washington could be insurmountable. Come on, the fear is that there isn't any more. There's no room for diplomacy, there's no room to negotiate, that space doesn't exist. Publicly, they talk about progress, but internally, they're speeding up defense plans and military reorganization. They carried out an exercise right in the Strait of Hormuz, right? They did 2 exercises, in fact 2 have already been done here, in which all the oil tankers have been blocked for hours and then the area is cleared. And then it moves on. But that's a first sign. When going to Gilarijan, the head of the Iranian National Security Council assured that Iran is not, as they say, seeking war, but they are ready, they claim. Washington has already mobilized 2 aircraft carriers, warships, and submarine planes. Well, everything is everything, and about what is known and what is not known, obviously, we can only imagine. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has decentralized military command to ensure a response, even if the main chain is attacked. In other words, the order has been given that, assuming the heads, the leaders of the Revolutionary Guard, are attacked, each node, each sector of the Revolutionary Guard could be operating individually without having to receive orders from above. That has been one of the biggest mistakes in previous wars. For example, the Egypt-Israel war decades ago. That was the problem. They attacked the Egyptian supply lines, they didn't attack the leaders, and the soldiers had no one to give them orders, so they did nothing. And the war ended very quickly, a war that could have dragged on this time. What the Iranians are doing is, okay, if a few leaders are left out or communications are suddenly lost through electronic warfare, these Revolutionary Guard soldiers will be able to make decisions without necessarily having to get direct orders from their commanders. We're not going to say no. How have you been, Jose Dominguez? By the way, Eliseo, how are you, Patrimon Salve? How have you been? Thank you so much for joining us. Also, Patria Brolis, how have you been? Greetings from Mexico. That's great. A big hello. How have you been, Patricia? A very good welcome as well to Fidel and to the whole community that's joining us. Hey, leave your comments. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's get to several important matters. If you give it a like, I won't get mad, right? That would be great. Thank you so much for that. Hey, another thing too, let's say about everything that's going on. Ali Khamenei basically stated yesterday that they supposedly have a weapon capable of sinking aircraft carriers. He says this. Can you imagine a decision like that? I mean, for them to say, oh, they go and sink an aircraft carrier? What would follow after that would definitely be the end of the Ayatollahs, right? Meanwhile, there are several facts, because they can't agree on whether this is going to be a war, if it's going to be long or short. The United States is mobilizing aircraft carriers while Iran is negotiating its nuclear program, in which it says it's negotiating, but in reality, it's not negotiating anything at all. While diplomatic talks about the nuclear program continue, it is admitted that the Iranians don't want to negotiate anything at all. Not even a comma, as some would say. No, they won't change a single thing about the nuclear program. The deployment of aircraft carriers will continue is very clear. The next phase will no longer be diplomacy. Thank you. Titra Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Kinsey Institute for Responsibility Starcraft, says that a war at this moment would be extremely dangerous in the area. Parsi warns that both sides believe a short and intense war could strengthen their position at the negotiating table, but that logic of escalating to negotiate also increases the risk of a miscalculation. The simultaneous presence of United States and Iranian forces increases the likelihood of incidents beyond what both countries have calculated, according to this analyst. He warns that a direct confrontation could involve regional actors and quickly escalate a conflict, that it could go beyond the limits that were believed it would have. Experts point out that the real danger is not war itself, but the belief that the conflict will be limited to a certain area, to a certain period of time. That would be the mistake, according to what they believe, a miscalculation, that if their calculation fails, this could spread to other regions of the world. Before we go, just moving on to other matters, let me tell you that this filmmaker has already been released in Iran. Let's see if we can show it here on the screen. He's an Iranian filmmaker who had recently been detained. He spent several weeks in jail over there in Iran. He is the screenwriter. Maidem Olmoadian was released after paying bail of about 34,500 euros after being detained for 17 days. Just imagine, he had been arrested after signing a manifesto that directly accuses the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, of authorizing violent repression against protesters. The document denounced the mass, systematic killing of citizens during the protests that broke out around December, at the end of December. Well, he has already been released after international pressure, after internal pressure. I mean, come on them. And this project they did won an Oscar and became internationally known. So he was an important figure there in Iran and in the world of cinema. Not with the other matters because, well, there's a bit of everything when it comes to information. Let's move on to other interesting topics. Thank you very much to everyone there commenting. Let's move on to another topic.
Teacher who has tempted Hermosa Milana Zafar.
Well, this is part of what Lukashenko says. It's a complaint he makes in the middle of the Russian crisis, assuring that this crisis, the Russian crisis, is causing negative effects for the Belarusians, in which prices have skyrocketed in that country. It's unusual for Lukashenko to dare to criticize what's happening in the Russian economy. Isn't it admitting to begin with that they're in a crisis in that country? That's already something unusual, isn't it? This has rarely been seen. Today, by the way, there was a strong comment from Ukraine in which they claimed that Belarus is increasingly participating in favor of the war in that country against the Ukrainians. Let's go. It's happening as it has been. Maria Salud, Maria Isabel, good morning. Basically, a conflict is taking place in which more and more countries are getting involved. That's part of the comment. Greetings also to Patry, by the way. Very good. How has Rublox been? A big greeting. Let's go over several details that are happening in that regard. By the way, there was something very curious today. I don't know if you've seen this video yet, but let's watch it. We can put it here. Look, this is it. Let's put it up here on the screen. Check out what happened. This is over in Geneva. That group of people there is the Russian delegation. Suddenly, the talks, the negotiations, and all that stuff were already over, right? And then look at what happens. Thank you. Suddenly they come back, they return, the Russian delegation comes back and they let us in there, but that's where they stop the journalists. This wasn't expected. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they turn around and the Russian delegation goes back to talk to the Ukrainian delegation in what they say was a dramatic and surprising move. Right before heading to the airport, they were already leaving the hotel, you know? The head of the Russian delegation, Mendes and Sky. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they decide to go back and meet behind closed doors. Yes, a secret meeting between Ukraine and Russia. What happened? What took place? And they go, well, happy. They didn't look worried. I mean, we'll have to see what the Ukrainian delegation says later. But it was a move, a break, so to speak, unusual, right? I mean, really strange not to see this move. Meanwhile, there are still complicated situations in this war. Ukraine reportedly launched this strike against a refinery, another refinery. This is in UPTA over there in Russia, right? And well, look at how the drone goes. It's an unmanned drone, right? One had already fallen there and now another one is coming. It falls at that moment. According to the reports, well, this refinery has been affected. Once again, there's the smoke that starts coming out from the explosion. It's a constant thing. It hasn't stopped. Meanwhile, Ukraine has sent a message that sooner or later had to be said, right? Because the United States has basically been asking for negotiations that favor Russia more, and the conditions of the Ukrainians are not being taken into account. No, in any case, that's not negotiation. In that case, no. I mean, there's no real negotiation happening. From that point of view, look at what Zelensky says, who hadn't dared to comment on or criticize the negotiations that are happening there, also in the United States, right? But President Zelensky called the public pressure exerted by Donald Trump for Ukraine to make concessions to Russia in the peace talks unfair, he says. The statements come after the third round of tripartite negotiations held in Geneva, mediated by the United States, which ended, at least publicly, still without a result. Or is it not exactly clear what happened? There were these movements that I showed you, but it's not exactly clear what's happening. In an interview, Zelensky warned that there can be no peace if the result means giving victory to Russia. The second day of talks lasted only 2 hours, although they didn't return in this meeting. The previous one lasted 6 hours. Today it was very short, and then there was this return. It's unclear if there will be a third, probably not. What Ukraine says is that if none of the conditions we asked for are going to be considered, then that's it. What's the point of negotiating? They've already proven unable to defend themselves, and the defense could continue indefinitely. In that sense, it's not ideal, but it's what could happen. Let's go together. We are also important. I just want to greet Patti, Liceo, Gloria, and the whole community that's arriving. Thank you very much for joining us, for being here with us. Look at the following image. Let's see if we can observe it. It's an image. Well, that was... I don't know if anyone here is watching the Winter Olympics, but something very curious happened. Suddenly, a Nazgul entered the ski track. No, it's a dog and a wolf, right? Or you know how sometimes they breed dogs and wolves. Well, a wolf dog came in and crossed the finish line. The two Olympians, out of nowhere, just like that, it came in really nicely, honestly. No one was watching the athletes anymore since they were arriving and all the cameras were focused on them. There's a shot that the production team really nailed there. It's a shame they don't let you show them. But there's a shot where the wolf is running like that in the snow, right? And him? Well, that's where the cameras are set up, the rails, the drones, everything. So there's a camera where the wolf and the camera are moving at the same pace, like that, where you can see it, right? The image is impressive. I hope you can see it. It's really beautiful. And, well, those are some curious things, right? It's really interesting. Now, another thing, also web scams from Mexico shows this in slow motion, where you can see, there it is. Look, is that a bolide or something else? What happened? Something shiny passed by, almost parallel, right? The object passed almost in parallel, the bolide, whatever it was, it passed almost in parallel in the camera. A shooting star, a bolide, something else maybe. So what do you think? Please leave your comment. Wouldn't it be interesting, whether it's frequent or not, that Popocatépetl could have very interesting activity in that sense? Now let's move on to other matters. Just listen to what is being said out there. Lukashenko, we've already mentioned Lukashenko, now Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, right? Let's listen to what he says. Let's not watch.
Of a threshold that has no thresholds and that directly, concretely, and seriously harms the legitimate interests of the entire people. And I think that this, as trivial as it may sound, is the cult of personality. When a person thinks above all about lining their own pockets at the expense of maintaining that almost heavenly image and about keeping power to hand out comfortable positions to their close associates, organizing certain clandestine and illegitimate business projects, and also relaxing, traveling to different islands. There, I don't know, to Capstein?
Well, so there it is. It's a controversial comment, obviously. Because who is he referring to? He's referring to Epstein, he's referring to Putin. I mean, obviously he's talking about all these topics. But at one point, if you watch the interview, it seems like, I mean, it would fit perfectly. Also, if they were talking about some Russian oligarchs, not including Putin himself. But anyway, obviously, always being critical towards the United States, towards Europe, towards different, whether leaders or interesting figures. That's not part of what he provides as proof in this interview. Later on, if you want, we can talk in detail about what he has been saying. This person who suddenly disappears for a while and then becomes very active again and returns to making comments, right? That's also interesting. By the way, yes, this one does catch your attention. These images appear images from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard itself, where they show this movement in the Strait of Hormuz, kind of showing that they are in control of the Strait of Hormuz. So far, I haven't seen a change in the price of oil, but this is a large amount, right? It's starting to go up, huh? The price of oil is starting to go up. Look, it's still within range, but it's already at the limit. It's already at the upper limit of the recent range, let's say. No, look, here's the current price of oil. And it's just today that it has gone up. So, if it goes above this yellow line, does it break the trend? Now, yes, completely. And that means something is happening with that issue. So let's move on to other important matters as well. Let's go. The United States. They are accusing and providing more information about the nuclear test that was allegedly conducted in 2020. Tensions continue to rise on this issue. Because, well, on one hand, the Chinese say no, that they didn't conduct any tests, but more and more evidence keeps coming out. This time, even with satellite images, they have been showing what is supposedly happening in the area. This time, images have been showing what is supposedly happening. Occasion satellite images. The point is that it would have generated nuclear yield. Christopher Yao, United States Deputy Assistant Secretary for Arms Control, spoke at the Hudson Institute, expanding on previous statements made in Geneva. They claim that China may have used a technique to dampen seismic waves, making international detection more difficult. So they have a system. This is pretty crazy, right? But anyway, they have some kind of damping system, just to be clear. That's why, to prevent the earthquake from being felt when they detonate an atomic bomb underground. The system is called decoupling. That technique dampens seismic waves and makes international detection more difficult. It was supposedly used on that occasion by China, the United States, and Russia. Since they would have, let's say, had certain agreements, China doesn't sign it, you know? China doesn't sign the treaty. In this case, Russia and the United States do. And the idea was, well, what China doesn't sign is the part about how many weapons it's going to have. But what they're supposed to agree on is not conducting nuclear tests, which supposedly they are doing anyway, according to Washington, testing low-yield weapons without being detected. While the United States maintains a zero-tolerance policy, it creates a strategic disadvantage for the United States. Because the United States says, at least, that they haven't used or tested weapons since around 1996, if I'm not mistaken. No, but since the 90s, right? There's also the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, by the way, which is another treaty as well. It expired on February 5th, so right now there are no treaties. I mean, there's nothing right now that limits countries from having atomic weapons, at least among these powers, right? The spokesperson for China has already responded. Lin Yan stated that China keeps its arsenal at the minimum necessary level and does not participate in negotiations, as long as the United States and Russia have them. So basically, they don't even consider them because, look, Russia has about 5,000 atomic weapons. The United States has thousands more. I mean, they have a ton, right? We don't even reach 1,000 in a day, say the Chinese. No, like, why would we sign something if we're way below you too? Just saying. Through this guy, who is the Russian spokesperson, Russian, right? He says the following: they claim that neither Russia nor China have conducted nuclear tests. And that's not true. That's not a reality. That's what they say. The PAN. The Pentagon estimates that China has already surpassed 600 warheads and could reach 1,000 nuclear warheads within 4 years. 2030, right? The Center for Strategic and International Studies indicates that satellite images do not confirm. It can't be ruled out or confirmed yet, according to that center or institute. Thank you. While they're looking for new balances, there are these kinds of constant challenges, right? Let's move on to other important, interesting matters. Thank you for watching this video. Notice that Marco Rubio, and we had already mentioned it to you here, but it wasn't possible to confirm it yet. It can now be confirmed, at least the news agency AFA is confirming it, so this supposed non-dialogue between Marco Rubio and Raul Castro's grandson is confirmed. Just look at that. So, according to what is known, there haven't been any secret contacts between the United States State Department and the Cuban regime. Marco Rubio would be holding discreet conversations with Raul Castro's grandson. While the United States increases pressure on Cuba, the United States Secretary is holding secret talks with Raul Guillermo Rodriguez Castro, the grandson of the former Cuban leader. The information was revealed by several media outlets, including Axios and others. Rodriguez Castro is the grandson of Raul Castro and, according to the report, is currently the caretaker. He is also a key figure within the closest circle of power in Havana. Talks are reportedly happening outside the Cuban government's official channels. This suggests a parallel strategy by Washington to directly influence the real core of decision-making on the island. The administration of Donald Trump, he says, is therefore considering to negotiate an exit from the regime, but this is not yet clear. Thank you. They clarify that these are not negotiations to reach an agreement, but rather discussions about the future. What is being implied here, at least in these media outlets, is that a political transition is being considered. Thank you. It should be remembered that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is of Cuban origin. His parents are Cuban. He was born in the United States, but his parents are Cuban. The conversations have reportedly been described as surprisingly friendly, or supposedly, that the State Department and the Cuban regime are talking as if they were great friends. And surprisingly, within these conversations, there has been an apparent good vibe. Let's say a detail that could indicate there's a change in tone, at least internally, and under the table, there's a more dialogue-oriented tone. Now, the energy blockade is hitting the island really hard right now, and that's also, well, it's a topic that puts maximum pressure on the regime. Right now, I can't imagine that they're going to want to reach a negotiation. The official position of the United States is that the regime has to go. That's the official position of Donald Trump and Marco Robbins. But down here, they're talking about a dialogue, about a transition that could last for quite a while. Well, not a good while, but more or less like what's supposed to be happening over there in Venezuela. No, let's go to the comments. Like in the state of Liceo. Odilia, how is the state? Greetings, Marisol, how are you? How have you been? Very good. Hello, a big greeting to the whole community that's joining. Liceo Odile, I already greeted you. Mercedes, how's the state? Cheers, thanks a lot. By the way, to all the channel members, thank you very much for that support. Thank you for being here with us, for liking, for sharing. Thank you very much for that. When this live stream ends, we'll automatically move on to another topic, another live stream. So if you'd like to join us, get your coffee ready because we already have another topic prepared and we'll go straight to the next live stream. But once we chat a little, then at night we'll chat again. And I'll see you in the next report, Let's talk about what's happening in this situation. So much is happening in parts of Iran, and now there's a movement between Russia and Iran. This is really crazy, and we haven't talked about it. And also the massive deployment of planes by the United States. And we're going to look at all of this in a little more detail right now, because there are several other topics that are still pending, he says. Dorian, how have you been? Greetings, Dorian. What's new? How have you been? Thank you very much for joining us. Greetings also to Belgium. What's happening between Belgium and US-Cuba, between Belgium and Donald Trump, is intense. Have you been following that? Maybe we can talk about it tonight. Between the Belgian and American governments. Someone even compared Donald Trump to that German guy with the little mustache. You know who I mean. They made a comparison between Trump and him. We'll talk about it later tonight to analyze it and all that, to see what reactions there are from the United States and everything. There must already be some reactions, right? Greetings to Ruesco and greetings to Eliseo as well, he says. They need to catch up with economic techniques, trade, and help the developed countries. Greetings, Eliseo. How have you been? Do they have to get their act together? Big time, huh? Who else is around here? Let's see. Someone we haven't greeted yet. Greetings, Garcia, as well. Greetings, how have you been? Very good. And Zibara says, I'm not working today, so I'll keep going. Awesome. Isapa, well then you're joining us. Thank you so much, Odilia Guzman. Also a big greeting to the whole community. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us. Well, that's how things are, right? Between the explosions over there in Iran and the upcoming drills. Today we're talking to you about that, the military exercises that are about to take place over there. All right, then let's move on, shall we? Let's go to the next information. Veronica, how have you been, Pepe? In Bolivia, the carnival was celebrated wonderfully, especially in Oruro. Later, we'll see what images we can find. Thank you very much, Veronica, and a big greeting, a hug to the whole community. See you. Well, I won't even say goodbye because we're going straight to the next live broadcast. We're not going with that topic, he says. No, nothing to do with it. That one was warlike and ready and smart. But Trump, as he says, well, good point. We'll see later. I haven't really seen how the whole Belgium thing is. I'll check it out later. What comparison did they make with this character? But yes, right, in that sense, the other one was very organized and very warlike, and this one is different, isn't he? More like kind of disorganized, right? Well, good point. Greetings, Mercedes, to everyone. See you in a moment. Here we go, Pepe.